Welcome to the Debka File, the compilation edition, in which we bring you highlights from the past month from Debka File's exclusive news, insight, and analysis in the Middle East. Let's take a closer look at the headlines. Iran talked of a war with Israel to deter the IDF from striking in Syria. Iran upgraded Hezbollahs missiles. Trump slowed the U.S. exit from Syria as the U.S. military shifted from Syria to Iraq. Israel's seizure of Iran's nuclear activity and its impact on Trump. Putin showed off Russian strength to Netanyahu during his visit to Moscow. Israel prepared for Iranian strikes on the northern border. The European Union boycotted the U.S. Embassy ceremony in Jerusalem. Hamas threatened the march of millions against Israel as fighter jets destroyed the Hamas terror tunnel. Iran is heating up talks of a war against Israel to deter the IDF from striking military advancements in Syria. Iran has been using these threats to keep Israel on high alert on its northern borders and to threaten Israel that any IDF action would escalate into a war. This allows Tehran to continue sending equipment and troops into Syria and Lebanon without hindrance by Israel's air force and missiles in order to anchor its military presence. Tension between Iran and Israel has been high since April 9th, when an Israel airstrike took down a Revolutionary Guards Air Force Command Center at the Syrian T4 airbase. On April 20th, a day after the Israel Independence Day, the Iranian Deputy Commander, General Hossein Salami, warned that they might send missiles into Israel and that Israel's air bases were within reach. Deputy Hezbollah leader Sheikh Naim Qassem said Tehran should prevent Israel from limiting Iran's movement in Syria. Israel Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman said Israel is prepared to deal with any threat.
תראה, את האיומים האלו אנחנו שומעים כבר הרבה מאוד שנים. אנחנו לא מתרגשים. ואני מציע לכל אלו בגבול הצפוני באמת לחשוב היטב מה הם עושים. ממש לא כדאי להם לנסות את צה"ל ולא את מדינת ישראל, ואנחנו מוכנים לכל תרחיש, אנחנו
Debka military sources have discovered that Iran is participating in a program called the Precision Project in order to upgrade 10% of Hezbollah's missiles into longer-range, more accurate weapons with enlarged warheads. The Israeli surveillance has detected hundreds of missile technicians entering Syria in February who were driven to Iranian and Hezbollah bases in Syria and Lebanon in order to work on upgrading the missiles. They were supplied with equipment and components by Iranian companies. Soleimani is spearheading the project, which has already completed up to 8,000 missiles, according to the Israeli intelligence. The missiles that the Yemeni Houthis have been sending to Saudi Arabian oil tankers in the Bab el-Mandeb Straits and the Red Sea have been testing the new Hezbollah weapon systems. For the past 4 years, the Hezbollah missile stocks have accumulated, and the IDF has not blocked Iran's acquisition of equipment for upgrading the project. On Thursday, Defense Secretary James Mattis discussed with Congress the plan to remove U.S. troops from Syria. He told the Armed Force Committee that he believes a military confrontation between Israel and Iran in Syria is becoming more likely, and accused Iran of expanding its presence in Syria by bringing advanced weaponry for Hezbollah.
Right now, Senator, we are not withdrawing. You'll see a re-energized effort against the Middle Euphrates River Valley in the days ahead, and against the rest of the caliphate, the geographic caliphate. You'll see increased operations on the Iraq side of the border, and the French have just reinforced us in Syria with special forces here in the last 2 weeks, and this is an ongoing fight right now.
On Friday, Pentagon officials stated that U.S. satellites, surveillance aircraft, drones, and ships had stepped up operations to monitor the movement of suspected Iranian ballistic missiles inside Syria due to rising concerns that they could be used to strike Israel in the coming days. U.S. President Trump will continue his goal of pulling U.S. troops out of Syria, but will do it in several stages. According to Debka military sources, the exit will be at the discretion of his top advisors and could be halted or canceled at any time. Trump discussed this strategy with Emmanuel Macron during his visit to Washington last week and made a compromise with the French president, who's been pleading with Trump to not pull U.S. troops out of Syria. Trump decided to compromise with Macron and Merkel as he suspects Russian President Vladimir Putin is preparing to take advantage of the U.S. departure from Syria. Trump is concerned that Iran will use this as an outbreak of violence in order to take control of the country. Trump sent General Joseph Votel, head of the U.S. Central Command, to Israel to make a case for the U.S. withdrawal from Syria. He spoke to Prime Minister Netanyahu, Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman, and Chief of Staff Lieutenant General Gadi Eisenkot. Debka sources report that the plan that General Votel presented to them was the following. 1,200 out of 2,000 U.S. troops will be withdrawn from Syria. Half of the remaining 800 troops will be sent to the Remlin Air Base in the Kurdish region of northeastern Syria to monitor the Syrian-Iraqi border. They will be given a helicopter force for sudden attacks east of the Euphrates River. The other half will stay at Al-Tanf, where U.S. troops will look for hostile military movements in Daraa and Kenitra. Although the troops will remain in Remlin indefinitely, the Al-Tanf location could be evacuated if the Trump administration comes to an agreement with Moscow over the next few weeks. Washington is looking for a guarantee against Syrian, Iranian, Hezbollah, and other Shiite militias setting up bases near Jordanian and Israeli borders. If Trump receives this guarantee, he will order the evacuation of U.S. troops from Al-Tanf. Meanwhile, the USS Harry Truman aircraft carrier will be used as backup for the remaining troops still in place. U.S. intelligence advised the president that the pro-U.S. Syrian Democratic Forces and the Kurdish YPG militia are equipped to defend themselves and can manage without U.S. military forces. Trump is now looking for a deal with Moscow. There are several obstacles that could prevent this potential deal from taking place. Trump is held back by the outrage in Washington over Putin's meddling in the U.S. election. Putin's also being held responsible for the toxic nerve agent attack on the former British spy Sergei Skripal and his daughter. Furthermore, the Russian Defense Ministry believes that since the U.S. will have to withdraw from Syria anyway, they should not receive concessions. Although Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov is in favor of getting Washington involved, Russian Defense Minister Sergei Shoigu is against it. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's speech last Monday, which showed that Iran lied about having developed nuclear weapons for 12 years, could impact U.S. domestic and foreign policy. His presentation was given after a collaboration between U.S. President Trump, Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, and Netanyahu. He showed that since Iran lied once, they can most certainly do it again. Meanwhile, Trump discussed the potential renegotiations of the Iran nuclear deal.
$1.8 billion in cash and $150 billion. You know what we got? We got nothing. We got nothing. So that doesn't mean I wouldn't negotiate a new agreement. We'll see what happens. But I think, if anything, what's happening today and what's happened over the last little while and what we've learned has really shown that I've been 100% right.
Trump now has a tool for exposing President Obama and Secretary of State John Kerry as misleading the American people and trusting Iran's false claims that the Islamic Republic had never sought a nuclear weapon because it is contrary to religious beliefs. Trump can accuse Obama of knowingly signing a deal built on Iranian lies, which could aid Republican candidates in the upcoming U.S. midterm elections. Trump also feels he now has more leverage at his meeting with North Korean leader Kim Jong-un to lead to denuclearization. Trump recently stated that, quote, killing the Iran nuclear deal will send the right message to North Korea. Former New Mexico Governor Bill Richardson discussed Trump's upcoming meeting with the North Korean leader.
I don't think that denuclearization can be accomplished in the first meeting, but I think important steps leading to serious denuclearization might happen. I think if we get, one, a ban on nuclear and missile exports, no chemical weapons to Syria, and freezes and limitations on North Korea's nuclear and missile activity, will be a positive step. In addition, ways that the 25 million people in South Korea are not exposed to a conventional or a conventional attack from North Korea.
This is what Netanyahu had to say in his widely publicized speech about the Iran nuclear deal.
A few weeks ago, in a great intelligence achievement, Israel obtained half a ton of the material inside these vaults. And here's what we got. 55,000 pages, another 55,000 files on 183 CDs. Everything you're about to see is an exact copy of the original Iranian material. First, Iran lied about never having a nuclear weapons program. 100,000 secret files prove that they lied. Second, even after the deal, Iran continued to preserve and expand its nuclear weapons know-how for future use. Why would a terrorist regime hide and meticulously catalog its secret nuclear files if not to use them at a later date? Third, Iran lied again in 2015 when it didn't come clean to the IAEA as required by the nuclear deal. And finally, the Iran deal, the nuclear deal, is based on lies. It's based on Iranian lies and Iranian deception. 100,000 files right here prove that they lied.
Debka sources reveal that Netanyahu's decision to go public on the archive occurred after intense discussions with U.S. Secretary of State Mike Pompeo when they met in Tel Aviv on April 29th. Pompeo discovered that Trump preferred that Israel disclose everything to the public. The following day, Netanyahu called the Security Cabinet into an urgent session to inform them about the news he would reveal in a televised press conference. Only a portion of the archive was revealed by the time he gave his speech. The remaining documents were still being translated from Farsi with the help of nuclear experts for technical terminology. Before deciding whether the U.S. will stay in the deal, Trump wants to see what the rest of the files contain. If further evidence of Iran's developing nuclear weapons is revealed, it will influence his decision on May 12th. If Trump puts sanctions on Iran, he will not attend the embassy inauguration on May 14th. If he holds off on sanctions to a later date, he will attend. Debka sources report that this joint project between the U.S. and Israel began when Pompeo informed Trump of the arrival of Mossad director Yossi Cohen with a proposal from Netanyahu. Israeli intelligence had received a tip from the Iranian exiled opposition that Iran's secret atomic archive had been traced to a hiding place in Tehran. A group of watchmen who belonged to an elite unit of the Revolutionary Guards were willing to make it available in return for bribes and a safe escape route from the country. This elite unit of guards was established to protect the archive and other secret sites under a high-profile officer of the IRGC. The archive covered the secrets of the Iran nuclear deal program until 2015, when the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action was concluded between Iran and 6 world powers. The Mossad chief was convinced that Iran continued secretly developing a nuclear weapon in violation of the deal at secret sites unknown to inspectors of the International Atomic Energy Agency. Pompeo was in favor of seizing the chance to get access to the atomic archive, and Trump agreed to sign a presidential directive for the operation to move forward. Debka intelligence sources reveal that the CIA, the Mossad, and the Iranian opposition group engaged its undercover agents in Iran by bribing the guards to retrieve the archive, either as photocopies, downloads, or originals. Their task was to smuggle the 100,000 documents, tapes, and files out of Iran to Iraq. From there, they were sent to Jordan, where Israeli and U.S. agents passed the materials by hand to the Israeli border. The secret files offered evidence that Iran cheated in negotiating the nuclear deal with 6 world powers. This could help President Trump remove the pressure to stay with the 2015 nuclear accord when it's due for renewal on May 12th. He can show that Iran negotiated in bad faith, denying the existence of a nuclear weapons program while keeping it intact and ready for reactivation. The head of the Iranian parliament's National Security and Foreign Policy Committee has stated Iran's plans for the nuclear deal.
ما این محدودیت‌ها رو پذیرفتیم با این هدف که تحریم‌ها به طور کامل مرتفع بشود. در شرایطی که تحریم بخواهد یک بار دیگر برقرار شود، طبیعی است که هیچ توجیهی برای افکار عمومی ملت ما و برای دولت ما و مجلس شورای اسلامی در ادامه این راه وجود نخواهد داشت. به میزانی که نیاز داریم غنیسازی اورانیوم رو بالا ببریم.
Russian President Vladimir Putin has invited Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to Moscow for the Victory March on Wednesday.
אפגש עם נשיא רוסיה ולדימיר פוטין במוסקבה ואשתתף במצעד הניצחון על גרמניה הנאצית. הפגישות שלי עם נשיא רוסיה הן תמיד חשובות לביטחון ישראל ולתיאום בין צה"ל והצבא הרוסי. ישראל שומרת על חופש פעולה מלא כדי להגן על עצמה.
This victory march is the 73rd anniversary of Russia's defeat of Nazi Germany. The annual parade showcases Russian weapon systems and military strength. Israeli Defense Minister Avigdor Lieberman has stated that if the Russian weaponry in Syria is used against Israel, the IDF will strike back. Putin is hoping that Russia's advanced weaponry will impress Netanyahu to the point that the Israeli Prime Minister will advise Lieberman to reconsider Israel's tactics. In the meeting between Putin and Netanyahu, which takes place just 3 days before Trump's May 12th deadline for the Iran nuclear deal, the two leaders will discuss the future of the nuclear deal and the situation in Syria. Putin will convey several messages to Netanyahu. First, Moscow believes that a military clash between Israel and Iran is inevitable. Putin will warn Israel to stay away from Russian forces in Syria, or it will come back to haunt them. Netanyahu is urging Trump to withdraw from the nuclear deal, but Putin claims that if this happens, no one in the Middle East will be the liaison between Israel and Iran. Putin believes this communication is vital during aggression between the two countries in Syria. Putin has asked Netanyahu to promise that if a war erupts with Iran, Israeli forces will not harm Russian soldiers or weapon systems. And now to our top headlines. Sunday was Jerusalem Day, marking the 51st anniversary of the city's reunification in the Six-Day War in 1967. On Sunday morning, thousands of people arrived to the Kotel to celebrate the momentous occasion. There was a flag parade from the center through the Old City to the Kotel, as well as speeches and ceremonies throughout the day. The ministers gave approximately 2 billion shekels for an education program to improve the school system in East Jerusalem and adjust it to the Israeli curriculum. On Monday, Israel's 70th anniversary, the U.S. moved its embassy to Jerusalem. Daniel Shapiro, the U.S. ambassador to Israel during the Obama administration, said that the move could help end the Middle East conflict. He said relocating the embassy was recognizing a reality and will, quote, help strengthen the principle that Israel's claim to the city, born of centuries of Jewish connection to the city, is legitimate and must be recognized. An estimated 800 guests will be at the ceremony, which will be attended by Deputy Secretary of State John J. Sullivan, Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin, U.S. Special Envoy Jason Greenblatt, Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law Jared Kushner, and Trump's daughter Ivanka. The official ceremony takes place in the Jerusalem neighborhood of Arnona. 30 out of 86 ambassadors have accepted the invitation to the Foreign Ministry Gala reception. Many European Union ambassadors are boycotting the event, however, except for Hungary, the Czech Republic, Austria, and Romania. On Sunday night, Israel's 3-week-long military alert peaked on its northern borders with Syria and Lebanon. Meanwhile, Lebanon's first election in 9 years came to a close. Military and political strategists believe that now that the election is over, Iran can focus its efforts on taking revenge on Israel for the 3 attacks on Revolutionary Guards targets in Syria on February 10th, April 9th, and April 29th. The Palestinian Nakba Day on May 15th is a day of terror, and the Israeli intelligence warned that Iranian and Hezbollah units are preparing for a missile attack. Officials believe that Iran will strike military targets in northern Israel. The Air Force and air defense weapons are on the highest alert. Debka military sources state that the missile attack could be stopped only by destroying the launchers inside Syria and Lebanon. On Sunday, the Israeli Security Cabinet met to discuss their strategy, and Netanyahu had this to say.
אנחנו נחושים לבלום את התוקפנות האיראנית נגדנו באיבה, גם אם הדבר יהיה כרוך במאבק. עדיף עכשיו מאשר אחר כך. אומות שלא היו מוכנות לפעול בזמן נגד תוקפנות רצחנית נגדן, שילמו אחר כך מחירים כבדים בהרבה. איננו רוצים בהסלמה, אבל אנחנו ערוכים לכל תרחיש.
Hamas has threatened to break through the Gaza-Israel border and ignite outbreaks in Palestinian centers to protest against the U.S. Embassy move. In response, Israel was on maximum security alert throughout the day. Debka sources report that in response to Egypt's intervention, Hamas leader Haniyeh claimed he had no say in the matter, but that the decision was up to the commander of Hamas' armed wing, Mohammed Deif. Hamas leaders attempted to pull the media attention away from the U.S. Embassy move by luring them with threats of violence and crowd scenes on the Gaza border. Meanwhile, the IDF has prepared for an escalation beyond pipe bombs, flaming kites, and explosive devices thrown across the border. Last night, they directed the Aviation Authority to close the airspace up to 6 kilometers from the Gaza Strip. On Sunday night, Major General Eyal Zamir reassured the Israeli local council heads that the IDF was prepared to ward off a mass Palestinian surge across the border. In Jerusalem, Judea, and Samaria, security was on its highest alert to prevent Palestinian demonstrations during the embassy ceremony in Arnona. On Saturday evening, following 2 days of anti-Israel Palestinian attacks, Israeli airstrikes blasted Hamas military facilities in northern Gaza, destroying a Hamas terror tunnel which ran from Beit Hanun to the Erez crossing. No injuries were reported. The IDF made this statement, quote, Hamas has tried in the past weeks to degrade Gaza's security perimeter into a field for war and terror. Violent disturbances are staged to disguise terrorist attacks above and below ground. The IDF will not let this situation continue and will take methodical and pinpointed action to thwart it. Palestinians in the Gaza Strip are again warned to keep their distance from the border fence. The Kerem Shalom crossing, which carries food supplies to the Gaza population, closed after rioters torched the gas pipe feeding the Gaza Strip and the food supplies for its population in a self-destructive act of vandalism. That's it for the compilation edition of the Debka File. We'll be back with you next week for exclusive news, insight, and analysis from the Middle East. Thanks for watching.